Got 4, 3, and okay, here we are. Uh, there is a bit of an echo. Diana, if you can turn your volume down a little bit on your computer.
Okie. Is that better?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful. I wish I knew what I was doing.
Just let me here for a minute.
Yeah, I did. I should have excused myself, but welcome to the living room where we are learning to live the most out of life. And the living room is sponsored by the Arizona Christian Men's Fellowship, and it is a safe place for real conversation about hot topics, hard topics, and taboo topics, if you will. And today, I'm privileged to have with me Diana Acosta-Bacon. And we have worked together in ministry over, well, quite a few years. And it's been a privilege. And we're here to, the title is My Next Level Included a Wheelchair. And Diana will kind of explain her story and her testimony in the process. But Diana, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Barney. It is such a pleasure and an honor to hang out with you once again.
Once again.
And it's really exciting to be at the living room.
Without guitars this time.
Yeah, well, does it mean it's not in the near future?
Right, right. So the interesting about March is Brain
Injury Awareness Month. It's Brain Injury Awareness Month.
Brain Injury Awareness Month, and we wanted to get Diana on because of her experience and her journey with, I believe it was a tumor.
It was a brain tumor.
Okay, so we were. If you have been in Tucson and in the faith-based community at any length of time, you probably have crossed paths with Diana. Tell us a little something about your background and what you were doing and how you kept yourself busy.
So prior to this tumor, I was doing ministry. I was pastoring with Church and Street many years. I think when I look back, it started about 2015 where I started getting some symptoms. So I was pastoring out on the street. I was doing Mexico. I would spend a month in Mexico in the orphanages with my dear friend, Pastora Teresa from Nana Ministry there. I was teaching in Sierra Vista every week, and I was doing about 5 outreaches a week. And then the monthly love banquets, we call them love banquets. It was a ministry, Love Works, and you came out and were assisting with your photography. And it was just really encouraging to see the community come together. And we had a lot of people connect. So we were doing monthly love banquets. And what that was is consisted of reaching out to the homeless community every month. And we would do a birthday dinner. And we'd have a very, we decorated like it was a banquet, and it was a love banquet every month. And we would celebrate the homeless people or the people who were low-income families, and we were connected. We had a partnership. I was in partnership with the Salvation Army Southside, and we were connected to the domestic violence housing and to the senior citizens housing. So the people would come that were very they were living on the lines of poverty, and it was just really, really fun and just a great blessing to celebrate them. And we had a lot of great partnerships come through that.
Yeah, when my little bit of part was photographing the events and participating in that way. And I was highly impressed with the amount of love that you and your husband put on these people, and even the volunteers that were there and supporting. Everybody who was there wanted to be there or needed to be there. And just the amount of respect and honor that was shown towards the challenged, disenfranchised, the homeless, um, and how the community came together to give them a day of. It, it, I'm trying to think of the right word, but the humanizing aspect of we see you and we care about you, and not only do we care about you, we love you. And that was one of the things that it was a pleasure to try and capture with photography and get involved. And like you said, it was Southside, and it was um, a huge an event. I was surprised at how large it was, but you were able to pull it off on a monthly basis. It was always something. Thanksgiving dinners was, that's kind of traditional, but a Valentine's Day banquet,
Yeah,
what were you thinking?
it was just beautiful, and it was just such an honor to give people what they deserve, the dignity of knowing that they're here and they belong here and that we want them here. And what a pleasure to serve that, letting people know that they're worthy of love and celebration.
Yeah, and then the donations that they
Mhm.
free haircuts and clothing and socks and whatever their needs were,
Yeah. Gospel.
hygiene
Yeah.
bags,
Mhm.
yeah, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Great.
Um, so, so here you are, and you were doing that for years. And the other experience that we shared was at the church I was at, you filled in and helped out with us with praise and worship. Um, you made yourself available because I think you were having church on Saturday that at that time or something, and was able to come and worship with us, which was kind of fun for me to watch because I'm around musicians all the time. But your praise and worship was a little different than I was accustomed to. Um, and so uh, the interaction, meeting together musically, was an awesome experience. So, having said that,
Mhm.
you were busy. You were busy, and you said it about 2015. You started to feel symptoms.
Well, when I look back, it was 2015 is when I was having symptoms. Because I was driving to Mexico once a month, and I was going to Sierra Vista every week. I started veering off the road a little bit, and that's when my husband he put this app on my phone so he can track me because I couldn't figure out. I just had blackout moments, and I was having a hard time driving, having a hard time walking, just having a hard time balancing. And I just thought, I'm getting older. I'm just getting older. I just need to
Hmm.
get it together. I didn't sleep well, or I needed more caffeine. And you know, I think we live in a culture of shaming pain, or shaming vulnerability, or shaming people to the point where they dismiss themselves. And I
Hmm.
dismissed myself a lot. I was a plower by our culture, culturally, and as a woman, you plow, you get to work, and this is what we do. And um, even in religion, even in faith, I did it to myself. I was really going through some stuff, and it was 2017. It was really coming to an end, and I was, First Corinthians. I buffet my flesh. I treat it roughly. I was working two jobs, and I was trying to manage, and I couldn't manage, and it was so hard. And I quit one job. I went to another. I had two jobs. I quit one, and I minimized the other. But it was when I heard God say, "Come take a walk with me," and I was walking about 10 miles a day. And I thought I just needed to narrow my faith. And I kept hearing, your faith needs to slow down. I felt like I was chalking in as much as I could. I was doing as much as I could, um, because in my heart, in my spirit, I knew that my time was almost up. If that makes sense, I didn't think I was going to die, but there was instinctively something in my spirit that knew your time to be an influence is coming short. Your time to do what you're doing is coming small, and you need to narrow my faith. And that's what I kept hearing: narrow your faith, narrow, make it even thinner. Like, I heard God ask me three questions in 2017, probably about 9 months before my surgery. And I had been going to the doctor, and I kept being dismissed: lose weight, change the way you're eating, de-stress, stop doing so much, go to physical therapy. And I did all the things that I was a vegan at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
God asked me 3 questions. And this is all in the midst of the 2 jobs and my walks. And he said, number 1, what are you doing? And I felt like Elijah in the cave. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? With such a sweet tenderness. I heard him clear as day. Number 1, what are you doing? Number 2, how much energy and time are you spending doing it? And number 3, who are you doing it for? And I had to get real. I mean, if you're not going to get real with God, who you need to reevaluate who you're getting real with. And that's when I kind of quit my one job and slowed down the other job a lot. 15 hours a week I was only working. And I still had a really hard time managing just 15 hours a week. I just was having a hard time doing that. And I still ask myself those 3 questions till this day. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
How much energy and time are you spending doing it? And who are you doing it for? And it helps me reassess, constantly reassess where I'm at.
That's a powerful 3 questions
Yeah.
that I think we all should,
Mm-hmm.
in the mirror, answer those questions, or at least
Yeah.
ponder in prayerful meditation about, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing? How much energy, and who am I doing it for? It sounds like there was within you, there was a spiritual aspect and a physical
Mm-hmm.
aspect going on at the same time. Um, you're starting to hear from doctors about what you should do and all these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And God is asking you on the spiritual side, what's going on. Um, and did you feel like there was a stronger force at that time? Was it physical or was it more spiritual?
It was both because those prayer walks were, man, they were so centering. They were so fulfilling. They those 10 miles every single day. I walked 10 miles, and that was my walk with God. And I heard Him clearly. And I remember it was probably 2 weeks into it that my dear friend Pastora from Mexico, so to raise awareness to their dream center in Nogales, her husband Pastor Ramon was walking from Phoenix Dream Center to Nogales.
Mm,
And when she called me, she was sharing how she was concerned, and I just started weeping. And I said, I heard God 2 weeks ago tell me to take a walk. And he said 2 weeks ago he heard the same thing. So I met up with him in Oro Valley, and I walked with him.
mhm.
So it took me about 3 or 4 days with us, and but that was one of the last big walks I took, was to Nogales, Mexico, to the Dream Center. Uh, and it was a powerful time of God sees me, God hears me, and there's something about being in His creation where the birds, they were ministering to me. They would sing and they would minister to me. The way the trees would wave, the way that the roots would stay grounded, the ways the leaves would release. I mean, everything was speaking to me, and I was just really hearing from God in every single sound outside. I was hearing from Him in my walks. Even
Wow.
when I was unstable in all my ways, I felt so unstable. And I got to walk. I got to do that. And it was just such a pleasure.
Wow. The that's amazing how God knows, and he speaks to you in such a way that you'll understand if you want to
Mm.
listen. And the fact that you said the birds were ministering to you, that puts you in a place where you are eager to hear from him. And as you are walking, figuratively and even really, um, as you are transitioning, are you aware that something is going on in your brain?
I'm completely unaware. I was doing physical therapy. It had been a solid year and a half with terrible, terrible headaches, just every day, just having terrible headaches, and they just wouldn't go away. Nothing worked. And I started shaking. I was having tremors on my right side. It was weaker. I couldn't turn. I couldn't turn my head very quickly. I knew something was wrong, but I kept dismissing it because the doctors kept dismissing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So doctors being natural. At some point, did you start to, knowing that seems like things were starting to deteriorate physically, um, did you start to ask God why or question Him? It sounds like your sensitivity to hearing from Him was on the increase,
Mhm.
but physically, you were your ability to function, you were losing it. How did
Yeah.
you feel during that period?
Honestly, in those moments, I was stuck on First Corinthians. I buffet my flesh. I treat it harshly, lest I preach and become disqualified. I had to keep plowing. It was part of my culture. It was part of who I am. It was part of keep going. And I just felt like there's that part of us that just, the rescued are the best rescuers. Those who know the love of God want to share the love of God, want to express it, want to give back in some way. And
Mhm.
boy, I was heavily involved in at least 8 ministries. And I was doing John 17 at the time. And I was, a little bit with you. And I was at Rising Star, which is my home church. I was doing the children's ministry there. I was helping with worship there for the kids. And we had just started a church. My husband and I had just opened a church, and there was just a lot going on, and still going to Mexico when I could, but I wasn't able to go as much because I couldn't trust myself to drive. Um, so in those moments, looking back, the truth is I was really just, I knew my time was almost up. I
Mhm.
just knew that instinctively. So I was trying to plowing as much as I could. I was wrapping up it looked like a Chipotle burrito of ministry. I was just trying to get as much as I could in there, and it looks like it was exploding. But I felt like my time was up. My time is running thin. And I knew my time was coming up. I just couldn't express or explain what it was. I just knew that I had to do as much as I could while I could.
When you say that your time being up, are you saying a physical death or a limited ability to serve?
I didn't know. I
Oh.
just knew in my heart that my time was what I felt. I heard in my spirit was my time to influence. What I was doing was running very thin. And looking back, there was just a lot of things I was doing that were good and they were great, but God didn't call me to do everything.
Mhm.
But I loved all of it. I loved every single aspect of it. The Tucson Homeless Connect, I'm still part of it, and doing outreach from Marana to Vale, and I love it. There's some things that I just, to this day, I got to deal with Diana sometimes and be like, sit your tail down in my best John Bacon voice. And
Mhm.
uh, my vision of what I do now is very different, very different.
Okay, let's talk about that. The transformation from, so you find out that your the physical things that are going on are related to a tumor.
Yeah. So I did physical therapy. That's the last thing I did that the doctors asked me to do. And there was this young girl. She was no more than 21 years old, and she said something is wrong. This is not a physical um, therapy thing. So she's like, you're not leaving my office. I had done like 12 weeks with her, and she put him on the phone, and she said, you need to give her an MRI. And I don't know why they hadn't at that point, to this point, hadn't given me an MRI. They put me on medication for my tremors, and they were of course offering me medication for my headaches, which I didn't want. I didn't want that. So they gave me an MRI. I had to wait 2 weeks for it. I went in for my MRI, and my husband and I didn't even leave the parking lot before the doctor called me and said, you have a brain tumor and you need to go see a neurologist. And we said,
Mhm.
okay. So we didn't know how to process it. We went home, we were like crying, we were laughing. We're like, what do you do like with this information? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And they were trying to get me in sooner, but I had already had a neurological appointment with a neurologist, an appointment at 4. So we just said, just leave it. Don't freak out. We're thinking they're just being a little bit intense. And I'm like, I've been trying to tell you this for like a year and a half. So part of me is like, whatever.
Mhm.
So me and my husband were like, okay, let's go. Let's get some information. Let's find out what this means. What are my options? We had no idea. We don't even know how to approach this. We don't know what kind of brain tumor it is. We don't know anything. So 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock comes and we went and I had to give records I went in with records and they said, what are you doing here? And they sent me across the hall to the neurosurgeon. And the neurosurgeon says, you're not leaving here. And they proceeded to do the paperwork and get on the phone. And an hour and a half later, I was being admitted to the hospital.
Wow. From that 4 o'clock appointment.
So by 6 p.m., I was being admitted into the hospital, and they said, you'll spend the night, and in the morning, you'll be having brain surgery.
Wow.
So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare.
No, no, not at all. So as we were talking a little bit earlier, you said that now you've gone from a 9-mile walk or walking from Oro Valley to Mexico, and from that and the physical um, prowess that takes to get that done, to finding out you have a brain tumor. Um, and which would explain, I guess, if there was any good news, that it would explain all of your symptoms that you were having.
For sure.
So if there was a positive thing out of it, we caught it early. Well, we caught it. I don't know how early it was.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so now you have to go through an extensive, I don't know if it was life threatening surgery or not, but you knew coming out life was going to be different.
I had no idea what to expect. I went in there it was surreal. It just seemed surreal. It just didn't, I wasn't processing it. Like we didn't have time. My husband and I, like I said, we went from crying to laughing to like, let's go find out what this means to you're in the hospital. And by the way, at 6 in the morning, you're having surgery and you're going to meet your surgeon. I hadn't even met him.
Hmm.
Um, and he had my case. He was up in Sedona, they said, and he was meditating on it. And that was good news for me. At least had my case and he was trying to figure it out. Um, but I had no idea. I didn't know. All I know, I remember asking, what are my options? And I mean, there was just a whole lot happening. The Mayo Clinic was involved with me. Am I going to be transferred? Am I not going to be transferred? I called my family. I had a very short, limited time to call people. And as we know, phones don't work really good in the hospital. So calling people and trying to process and trying to prepare for surgery it was just a lot going on. It was just a lot going on. So the day after I got admitted to the hospital, I had my first craniotomy, which is where they drill into your skull and crack it open and take as much as a tumor out as they could. Um, I woke up and I remember a lot of hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Worship was my number one. I did have enough sense to make a worship playlist. And I told my husband, I said, as soon as I wake up, if I wake up, just hit play.
Mm.
I just need to hear worship. I don't know if I'm going to talk. I don't know. I don't have no idea what's going to happen to me. And he said, okay, babe. And I remember waking up and the first thing I remember is people yelling at me, breathe, breathe, breathe. Apparently I stopped breathing. So that's what I remember. And I remember he hit my play and remember a lot of hard stuff. And Then I find out 2 days later that my surgeon came in and said, we need to do another surgery. Good news, he said, we can use the same, crack that we cut your skull open the first time. And I was like, okay, well, that's not great news, but it still
Yeah.
really hurts. Can you not? And can I do something else? And he said, no, we need to come, it was on your brainstem. The first one, it was your cerebellum. So they took a big piece out. It was about the size of a golf ball. And he said, we didn't want to hurt you. We didn't know it looks like your brainstem. It was so interwoven into the brainstem
Mm-hmm.
that they were afraid. He goes, this one's going to be a lot worse. So exactly 1 week later, they did the second brain surgery, and it was a lot worse. And wow, that recovery, I came out of the first one, I was like, I got this, in some crazy sense, but still trying to recover from that second hit that took me
Mm.
out a lot more.
How long were you in the hospital?
I think the whole time, less than 2 months, so between a month and a half and 2 months,
Okay.
between the between all of that, and then they transfer me into in-house physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
The as you are coming back to yourself and realizing um, that I surgery was successful, and now you are rehabbing back to the new you. Um, and the interesting thing, as I'm thinking about your walking and prior to, and how much walking you were doing, and prior to surgery, walking 9 miles. And again, the title of our show, My Next Level, included a wheelchair. So now you're coming out of the hospital in a wheelchair. Um, what do you think is next? Had you formulated or started to get back to, or did you lose your connection with worship, with God, and as a part of as you're rehabbing? Because, like you said, I don't know what to expect. So, on that side, coming out of the surgery and getting your life back together again, um, and the thought you said in the beginning was, I knew my time was almost up.
Mhm.
Coming out of surgery, coming out of the hospital, getting into rehab, did that change how you felt?
Um, it was really dark, and it was really, really dark. And when I say dark, it was just a place of everything. I felt like my superhuman power was I could hear everything, like too much, and everything was too bright, and everything was overwhelming. It was overstimulating. It was thank God for my husband. John Bacon has been such a pivotal part of my healing. Um, God sent him with healing in him to give me, really, because I just sidebar. I think of John, and I don't know if you know who Thich Nhat Hanh is. He's one of these Buddhist monks who I just love him so dearly, and he says that you must love people in a way that they feel free. And boy, he sure did.
Mhm.
John loved me in a way that I felt free. That he didn't dismiss my pain. He didn't dismiss how I felt, my emotions, whatever I was feeling. I didn't even know how to figure it out. Even now I have overstimulation. Sometimes it'll be something as quick as a car driving by with the radio blasting would overwhelm me. Um, it was a dark place. It was a dark place that I was in, and I'm really grateful for prayer at that point, because I remember, if you can remember when we were kids back in the day, they don't do this now, I don't think so. They would pull like this big blanket out, or a big, it was like a parachute looking, and they would put you in the middle, and then everyone around would like lift it, and you
Mhm.
go, you go flying, and they would swing you, and that's what I felt like. I was like floating on this And that's what it felt like. And that's what it feels like still. It feels like this floating. And when I just didn't have it in me, I didn't have it. I knew the word was there. I couldn't access it. I couldn't
Mm.
access it, but I knew it was there. I couldn't formulate the words. I couldn't formulate the thought process to put them forward. I couldn't put it together. And in those moments, those crucial moments, I remember just, I could hear prayers. I could feel, and it was so tangible. It was so tangible. And it just lifted me, and it lifted me when I couldn't figure it out. And I never asked that question of, God, why me? It was a matter of, what now? What now? And how am I supposed to do anything now? Like, I got to figure this out. Like, that was my first go-to, is I got to figure this out. And I couldn't formulate stuff. I couldn't connect it. I just knew it was somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't find that filing cabinet with the file, that I couldn't find the room. I couldn't find the building. I had no direction to figure out how to access that, what I knew in my heart.
Mm-hmm. What you knew in your heart with what God wanted for you and from you at this point?
Yeah, like, that was my question. Like, what now? Like,
Yeah.
everything is figure outable, right? Everything is figure outable, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. So there was a time and space, and this space seemed to have lasted about 8 months, and I couldn't go to worship because it hurt. I couldn't listen to worship because it hurt. I didn't want to speak. I barely spoke because it hurt. The vibration of my own voice in my head
Mm.
is sometimes too much. I couldn't pick up my guitar. Oh, I love Sophia, my guitar, because I couldn't handle her weight on my chest. I couldn't, the vibration of touching a string was too much.
Wow.
That was really painful. And, but I was desperate for worship. I was
Mhm.
desperate for it. And it was in this time that I felt like I was belly crawling, like on my elbows. I was belly crawling I had to feel my way out. I couldn't walk my way out. I had to feel my way out of this dark place. And this darkness seemed so familiar
Mm.
because there was like this weirdness that, and I still do that. I close my eyes sometimes when we're out. It's overwhelming. And because it's one more sensory I can remove. If I close my eyes, then it's one less
Mm.
overstimulation.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
remember in that space, I would I would just close my eyes, and I would be in a dark room, and um, there was a familiarity about it because when we pray, we close our eyes. Like, instinctively, we seek God. We seek to feel Him out in darkness. We seek guidance. We close our eyes when we pray. It's then when we seek guidance. It's there where we look for Him and we feel for Him. Um, and it's there where I found my table. I found my table, and until this day, it's been 3 years, and I still hold on to my table. And in Psalms 23, it's in verse 4, it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death."
Hmm.
Oh boy, I remember starting to be in my walker a little bit, and it was hard because my balance is. Boy, if that sun was beside me or behind me, I would see my shadow. Until this day, I hate seeing my shadow because it's hunched over. It looks all warped, and it looks like a little old hag. And it
Hmm.
makes me so sad. And I think, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Even in the darkness, that shadow is a lie. Because the
Right.
truth is, I'm walking. The truth
Yeah.
is, I'm standing. The
Yeah.
truth is one thing, but what I'm seeing is something that takes me in a different direction.
Right.
And it
Right.
was there that I was crawling, and I felt like I was just feeling my way. I don't really walk unassisted, and I don't last very long when I walk. And feeling my way to this place that I needed some stability. I needed to find my place. And He says He prepared a place for me. He prepared a table for me in the presence of my enemies. And I remember feeling my way through it. I remember finding this table, and it felt like oak, and I could feel the knots and the ridges, and it was such a moment where I could feel the thickness of this beautiful table, and I would just hold on. And every time I would lift my head, the enemies, in the presence of my enemies, I recognized and I realized in that moment, those enemies were my own thoughts
Mhm.
of what I
Yes.
can't do, my devalued sense, my disability, my inability, my hunching overness, my what are you
Mhm.
gonna do? In the moment I would lift my head just enough to put my eyes on those enemies, they would just vanish. And boy, that scripture just came off the pages for me. Just came off the pages. And it was till this day when I feel overwhelmed, I'm always holding, I find something. I find something to hold on to because that's my table.
Right.
And the
That is so
moment I feel an
powerful.
enemy, I recognize it's my own thoughts. Look at the
Mhm.
truth. What is the truth? So your question of what my thoughts were is, how did I get back to where I need to be? And first of all, not everything is recoverable. I don't ever want to go back to the way I was. I was
Mhm.
doing too much. There was too much going on, and it was taking me away from God. Doing stuff for God was taking me away from God.
Right. Right. That is a huge lesson that gifted people, that's one of the biggest challenges, is to be able to scale back away from your gifts and your talents and abilities to focus on what God has called you to do, because of all the things you can do, you
Yeah.
end up trying to fill a void because you can, not because you call to. You see it. You have a godly sensitivity to see, see into people's hearts, to anticipate what their needs are. And then, if it's within your ability, you will service or attempt to service those needs. And so you could run yourself raggedy. And I think the term is burnout, that doing a lot of the good things and a lot of right things, but those are not the right things for you to do, for you personally to do. And so, as you are starting to find your table, and when I think of a table, I think of, um, and you mentioned about the thickness of it, and how if you could get to the table, it becomes something you can hold on to. There becomes a stability that um, that you can hold on to. And then the other place, the thing about a table that came to my mind was, that's where things are served. Um, and if you can stand up and stay there, God will serve you with what you need. And so the thought comes to mind, as you are going through this continual process. Was there anything, or what things did you have to relearn how to do after the surgery?
How to walk, how to balance. How to balance is still a challenge because it was my cerebellum and my brainstem, which is central balance. And uh, the first thing I had to learn how to do the first day, like right after surgery, was breathe. They would say, "Okay, we're counting to four, and breathe. Count to four and breathe." And my daughter says to me, "Mom, that was the moment I knew you were good. You were okay. You were going to be okay." Because I said, "You're not making me do math. It, I just got a brain surgery. I'm not counting till four. I'm not. It was too much math, and I don't like math." But I remember, yeah, that balance is not fun. It's not fun.
Are you back to, and my heart kind of dropped, and only because of, we worship together. We've played
Mhm.
instruments together.
Yeah.
And for a musician not to be able to play is a certain level of, um, I don't know what the word is. It's, I'm tied to my instrument. So, but for a worshiping musician, that hits not just musically, but spiritually.
Yeah.
And to not be able to use the very thing you used for worship um, must have been, and you said it hurt. And it must have hurt on two different levels because you can't hold your instrument and then you can't use it to get where you need to go spiritually in worship.
Mhm.
So, how did you manage that? And I've seen a couple of pictures of you with your guitar.
Mhm.
And are you back to playing again?
Yeah. So it was devastating. And I remember laying in bed with her sometimes with my guitar and I just really wanted to worship. It was that time that my best friend's father passed away, and he was a worshiping musician, and uh, her mom gave me his keyboard. And
Um,
because I have such tremors on my right side, I'm right-handed, so I had to relearn how to do everything. But I started with one key at a time with my left hand on the piano, and I would just give myself a note, and I started very lightly teaching myself how to play the piano enough where I could worship.
hmm,
And then little by little, I picked up my guitar, I picked up Sophia, and little by little, I had to sing my way back to God's arms.
wow.
Music was a huge part of my
Yeah.
healing. Music, God just ministered to me through song. My first song on the playlist was Defender by Rita Springer, and it was just like when I thought I lost me, you knew where I left me, and you reintroduced me to your heart. And Stephanie Gretzinger with I Sing My Way Back to Your Heart. And I just wanted to sing that song because that was that was my moment. Those first 8 months is when I feel lost and I can't find my way back, I'm going to sing my way back.
Right. Right. That,
So yeah, I'm not the
yeah.
greatest and I still have my shakes, but you know what? God doesn't care.
Nope.
He's, he's just, he just loves me and he makes the birds sing around me with it. I feel like Snow White sometimes, or is that Snow,
Wow.
Snow Cocoa, whatever.
That is a powerful statement to you, your strength and your reliance on God's strength. Because I want to ask the question with all of the opportunities you had to throw in the towel and to settle for at any stage of your journey back to health, back to worship at a level that you are comfortable with. You had several opportunities to just throw in the towel, and just about everybody might be okay and understand you stopping short of what you feel God is calling you to do. You only know that. And probably a few close friends would say, no, you're not settling for less than what God has called you to do. I'm one of them. Um, so, what was it that kept you going that made you feel like you needed to exceed? You couldn't stop the press. I'm sure you don't know what the end looks like or how far you're going to go. Um, but there's something about you that is keeping you progressing and not saying enough is enough. I'm tired and I'll stick with one finger on the piano. What is it about Diana?
Well, first of all, there are days when that's okay. And it is maybe not even putting a finger to the piano. But there was something inside of me that desperately needs to break open. And I felt like in those moments of brokenness, that's where the light comes in. And that's where, when you have a wound, you can't wrap it in plastic, you can't bind it. You need to let it breathe.
Hmm.
And my healing came by letting my heart breathe and finding a way to express because words were hard and walking was, it's no longer in, I can no longer go for walks. I can't even go outside by myself anymore. And um, I still had to find a way to let my heart breathe. I can't just, like, what's the alternative? Like, I can lay down and do nothing. And that's okay. If I feel those moments, is to allow myself that the frailty and the vulnerability of being weak that day. And so many times I wanted to quit, and so many times I don't want to do worship because I can't play very well. Oh, my hands are shaking and blah, blah, blah. I missed a tune. And then I think about how God sees it and what it sounds like to him. And how in the midst of this, I want to advocate, not just for myself, but I want to advocate for those who don't have a voice to advocate, for those who are shut-ins because the shame of chronic pain is too much. I want to advocate. So if I can go out and encourage one more person to try again, it's okay if you cry through it. It's okay if it sounds like everyone else's opinion is a mess. To God, it's not. And God cares about all those little things. And he cares about the part when you feel messy, and he cares about the part when you're doing it in pain. And for the first time in my life, I understood the scriptures of the sacrifice of praise. I'm like, that's not before I'd be like, that's not a sacrifice. There's no sacrifice in worship. I get it now. I get it.
That is powerful. It's one of those things that I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because worship is it's gotten so that's what you do, and it's not who you are. And there's a time in the service set aside for worship, and so you jump in and you jump back out. So the fact that you were at a point where I guess I could almost say you were denied the privilege of worship. You couldn't get it together to worship. That only, and in your mind and in me hearing it, the value of worship and what God really wants from us, that heartfelt worship, even with one finger, one key, or a trembling hand, that to him, starting to understand how that sounds in his ears, the unhindered, the imperfected praise, but perfected because of the source, to push through, to be able to worship him with 100% of my wrong notes, and for him to smile, give you a standing ovation because of your attempt to touch his heart. That is a powerful image that I wish we all could grasp while we have the opportunity. And you said it that, and you said something that really kind of triggered my thought about people that have chronic pain, chronic illnesses, and the position that they, because of what they are going through, kind of withdraw themselves from those who are or should be there to not just pray them through, but walk them through what they're going through, whatever it is, whether it be a brain tumor, cancer, or whatever it is. What would you say to both the sick people as well as the well ones about what you believe, based on your experience, God wants from both of them?
Wow. I think first we have to learn how to let go. The trees are the perfect example and the perfect lesson of everything has a season and everything has its time. And when the trees like let go of their leaves and it feels like it's overnight, but they almost look dead and dormant, but they're not. They're just healing and they're just resting and they're just getting the nutrients they need. And those nutrients change in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Find what nourishes you. And sometimes it's one person. And for me, it was my husband, and who just was, man, he just stood by me. He just never was frustrated. He never rolled his eyes at me. And cry when you want to cry, but find what lets your heart breathe. You have to find what lets your heart beat. That for me, it was the arts. It was through music. It was in the wreckage of my life, what appeared to be a wreck, and just the ashes of everything that was all my hopes and dreams. I built a garden, and there was so much healing into sticking my hands in the soil and being barefoot and being out in nature and earthing and just being in the sun and planting things and learning that everything has its season, and every one of my plants takes a different kind of nourishment. I can't give the same to the other. Know what nourishes you. And it's okay to be selective about that. And you don't have to apologize for saying no, and you don't have to apologize for your chronic pain, and you don't have to apologize for being in a wheelchair. You don't have to apologize. In Psalms 23, it says, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." And Barney, let me tell you, God dropped that in my spirit. They comfort me because my rod is my ability. Those are my mobility devices. Like, they comfort me. I can't walk without my walker. I can't go very far. I have to be in my wheelchair, but they comfort me. I get to lean on these things that God has provided, and to recognize there's no shame in that.
Right.
If the community that is supposed to be there to help others would just remove the shame, the shaming, and the needing to find a reason for it, like, just remove all that. Life happens, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, and this human condition is chronic,
Right.
and we're all trying to do our best. And if we would just, it's so easy to give grace to people, but man, if we can be so more compassionate with ourselves and treat, like, you wouldn't talk to a 4-year-old like that, but yet you talk to yourself. You wouldn't think you have those thoughts about a 4-year-old if they made a mistake, but how come you're thinking about it to yourself? So treat yourself with more compassion, and I would really encourage those who have never experienced it to maybe stop shaming or trying to justify or rationalize it. There are some people that had said some things, or thought some things that were not very godly or very kind or even compassionate, and those aren't helpful, and those people are not nourishing. And to simply say no thank you when you know they're not nourishing you, and just nourish yourself and find something that lets your heart breathe. And if that just means sitting outside for 15 minutes in the sun barefoot with your feet in the ground with a lemonade in your hand, then that's okay. And if that means crawling into bed and getting under the blanket for 15 more minutes or 4 hours, that's okay too. It's finding ways to be compassionate with yourself and allowing yourself the ability to do what Jesus never denied, is being human. Just the chronic condition of being human.
Mm-hmm.
He never cringed from it.
That is amazing. In that the way that you have phrased it is the person, um, the self healing in oneself, with God's help. Um, you need to take care of yourself. And you mentioned earlier, off mic, about having a few Job experiences, and there are always going to be those kind of experiences, whether it's a physical issue, an economic issue, or a relationship issue. People, Job's friends are always around.
Mhm.
And the important thing is just like Job, just like you, being in a place where um, I know who I am, I know who I serve, um, and to be able to say to a friend, family member, I hear you, but I don't accept that as truth. Um, I know you.
Mhm.
We use the word speculate. You can only guess, but God is not through with me yet. Um, and the ownership of your healing, the ownership of your condition, and I like the word you used, shame, and how society has a way of trying to connect misfortune and challenges, life challenges, to something else. Not just the process you go through. You must have done something. Um, and so your testimony that you're sharing with us tonight about the whole process um, with something like a brain tumor, which I don't think you inherit those, or it's not in your DNA, or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's a rare thing, um, and it has come and it's gone. And so now on the other side, some people might say, well, you got a second chance at life. Um, and then I guess in some circles that might be true. Um, I believe that this was, like you just mentioned about the different seasons and the plants, that was a season for you. And now that the season has changed, your focus is changing. Your purpose, I don't believe, has changed. How it's manifested might change. But um, I think of it being not buckshot, but more laser focused, more accurate than it's been before. Um, your growth, your personal growth, your relationship, not only just to John and to you, but the people you serve, the people that your testimony are going to touch, um, are going to stand up and maybe in a walker or in a chair and take a level of pride in just being, I am one of God's children, and I might be his favorite. Look what he's done for me. I think the mental mindset that you can help people with all that you've been through is going to be life changing because of the very experiences you have gone through. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, and you can have your final remarks. Um, what, and I did ask about um, those who have similar experiences and those of us who support and and increased sensitivity because of your testimony. What we need to do what God would have us to do in His behalf. So I appreciate you, and you can have just empty your heart.
So my question, was there a question you asked me, or was that my final, what I wanted, what I would love for me to give you as a takeaway?
Yes, that's just
Okay.
talk to us.
So one of the things that, besides my table, there's a lot of things that I have that are just till this day a big part of my life. And my table is anywhere. God's presence, I don't have to be in a certain place, in a certain posture. He is right there with me all the time. So I can be stable even if it's my laptop. One of the things I had written on my mind and on my wall, not in, just in theory, was something I really had to get to a point in my life that I still remind myself when I want to do stuff, even if it's something silly. like cooking dinner, something small for most people. But for me, it's, what am I doing? Let's say I want to do dinner. How much energy is it going to take to do that? Oh, it might take me like 2 hours. Who am I doing it for? I'm doing it for my husband. But the truth would be, I'm doing it because I want my husband to know I love him. So I would do it for myself. But my husband would rather have me with him for 2 hours than in bed because I spent 2 hours making dinner. So I still ask myself those three questions. But one of the things that I remind myself every time I walk out that door and every time I wake up is something that I would want everyone to know, is that your value is not dependent on your ability to do anything. That you are God's beloved, whether you do or you don't do whatever those things are you think you're supposed to be doing. He loves you regardless, and he cares about every single aspect of your life, the hard stuff and the small stuff. We can't all climb mountains. It's the everyday small stuff that matters to God. It's everyday choices that we make, and knowing that there's good in that darkness. I think about the rhythm of life, and rhythms changed. And when you feel overwhelmed, is to get yourself to a place where you can find a place to just sit. An ocean would be the perfect place to sit. And if you can picture an ocean and how the wave comes right to this invisible edge, but it knows just how far to come. God has commanded. There's this invisible edge that it comes to, and there's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm to this ocean, and even in your darkness, just you can hear the ocean. And if you ever sit at a beach, you ever see like people walking, and sometimes they're just like picking up stuff, and the ocean leaves these little treasures, leaves these little treasures for those who look for them. And then it just retreats back. And sometimes it buries them, and sometimes it reveals them. And I want to pick mine up, those little treasures, in the gentleness of the rhythm of life, in the gentleness of where God has me, into a place where I can be with him with no time restrained, because I don't have to do anything. I get to do some things for God, and those are great. But to remember that even in that darkness of your life, once you let your eyes adjust a little bit, it's not that dark, because the light within us just continues to shine. To give yourself a break, give yourself a moment to just behold. This word behold is so beautiful. It's like just to step back and look at your life, no matter where you are. Maybe you've never experienced a physical setback in your life. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's relational, but behold and see how far you have come. Like, check you out. Like, look at yourself. Take pictures, take notes, just text yourself information, email yourself, however you need to do it, to just allow the truth to speak. Everything in my life changed when I came into agreement with the truth. And I stopped believing those lies, those enemies that were at my table. They were in the presence of my enemies, but they didn't get to sit at my table unless I kept my head down. And I allowed those voices to overwhelm me. Sit at your table. God prepared that table just for you. And you tell those enemies to vanish by coming into agreement with the truth. The truth is that you are God's beloved. The truth is that he cares about all of it. All of it. The hard stuff, the victories and the defeats. And he's right there with you. But be kind, be compassionate with yourself. I think I want people to recognize the beauty in mourning with those who mourn, and weeping with those who weep. The dearest friends that have stuck by me, my precious husband, my beautiful family, they mourned when I mourned, and they wept when I wept. and they rejoiced with me. And they just got to be in this beautiful, ever evolving, beautiful and terrible human condition. It's not always comfortable, and we don't always need the answer, and we don't have to find an answer, but just be there and be present in it, feel it, and be okay with it.
Wow. Thank you so much. That powerful words that you have lived. The two things that stuck out to me was the give yourself in darkness time for your vision to adjust. That just give it some time. It is what it is, but give it some time, and your eyes, your vision will adjust. And the second thing was to be able to honor and respect and embrace the truth. And knowing who you are in Christ and who you are to Christ, being able to accept the truth and the human state, no matter what state we find ourselves in, God doesn't love us any less. And he's always there. And so I, again, thank you so much for joining me tonight and talking about an experience that I hope people will see the hope in living it through with dignity, with strength, or without, living through it as part of the process as God is preparing you to get you where he wants you to go. Again, thanks, Diana. I appreciate you. Love you. I love your ministry, your work. If people would like to get in talk with you or get in touch with you, there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, so my husband and I have a website. It's Kingdom First. So Kingdom, the number one first, servants, Kingdom First, Kingdom Servants First. I just forgot the website. Kingdom First Servants. Oh my gosh, I probably should have that website in my head, huh? Shouldn't I? We're on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Let me see if I can actually find my the webpage. Kingdom Servants First. So Kingdom Servants, the number one st.com. And you can contact us through our website, Kingdom Servants First. For him and I, we're both on Facebook as well, and we're both on Instagram as well. And those are all my contacts on there. My email, my phone number, everything's on there to connect with me.
Thank you. Diana is a resource to better your condition. With her experience and her love for people and a love for helping God's people and ungod's people as well. So very approachable, very conversational, but real, spicy real sometimes. Woo-hoo. So God bless you, and you take care of yourself. And we look forward to getting together soon and making some music and making some worship. And God bless you, and tell your husband we said hello.
Thank you so much, Barney. I love you too. God bless you and Jackie. Thank you for everything you do.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.